So the next problem we have is 7x squared minus 80x plus 33 over x minus 11. So what do we do first? We try direct substitution. So we're going to take an 11. So that gives me 7 times 11 squared minus 80 times 11 plus 33. And I get 0. So just to review, what are my options here? I either have 0 or as an answer, or this is indeterminate, depending on what I get for the denominator. Well, 11 minus 11 is 0, so this is indeterminate. So this is something that looks like it could be factored, but instead of me guessing and checking all day long with larger numbers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide out the x minus 11 and see what's left. So think about it this way. If I've got a 24, different problem, okay? If I've got a 24 over a 6, I could take 6 into 24 and I would get 4 for an answer. Okay? So I want to see if 24 can break down to 6 times 4. I want to see if this quadratic can break down where x minus 11 is one of the factors. That's what we're doing. So I'm going to use long division. So I have a 7x squared minus 80x plus 33. So again, if you want to try and factor it, you'll be able to factor it. I'm just trying to save some time. Okay? So I have an x. I need a 7x squared. So what do I multiply this x by to get 7x squared? I multiply it by 7x. And I'm going to take my 7x times everything out front and put my answer in the appropriate column. So 7x times negative 11 is negative 77x. 7x times x is 7x squared. So what did I mean by the appropriate column? I put the x's together and I put the x squareds together. So if I were dividing, what would I do right now? I would subtract. So I'm going to subtract by changing the signs. Okay, so 7x squared minus 7x squared is no x squareds. That first term should fall off, otherwise you've done something wrong. So negative 80x plus 77x gives me a negative 3x, and then I'm going to drop down the 33. Okay, so try it again. I have an x. I need a negative 3x. What do I multiply by? I multiply by negative 3. So take your negative 3 out front. So what is negative 3 times negative 11? It's 33. What is negative 3 times x? It's negative 3x. And what do I do now? I change the signs. So I have a remainder of 0. All right, so what does that mean? That means I can break down 7x squared minus 80x plus 33 into x minus 11 times 7x minus 3. Just like this was 6 times 4. I have this times this equals this. So my new limit, not my new limit, my function becomes x minus 11 times 7x minus 3 over x minus 11. So what are we going to do now? We're going to reduce the x minus 11s. That leaves me with 7x minus 3. So I'm going to use direct substitution. And I get 7 times 11 minus 3, which is 77 minus 3, which is 74. So let's try another one like that, just so that you get used to the long division. So the limit as x goes to negative 11 fourths of negative 4x minus 11 over negative 4x squared minus 55x minus 121. So I want to see if I can reduce this. I want to see if negative 4x minus 11 is a factor of this denominator. So I'm kind of going to flip what you're expecting me to do. Normally we take what's on top and divide it by what's on bottom. But this time, think about it this way, new problem. If I have 4 over 24, I can find out the factors of 24. And I can reduce the 4's. So I'm going to find out the factors of this denominator. So I'm going to take a negative 4x minus 11 and give a negative 4x squared minus 55x minus 121. And then our process is the same. I have a negative 4x. I need a negative 4x squared. So what do I multiply by to get that? I multiply by x. And I'm going to take x times negative 11 and get negative 11x. X times negative 4x is negative 4x squared. And now what do? I change my sign so my first term falls off. That leaves me with negative 44x minus 121. So I have a negative 4x. I need a negative 44x. So that's going to be a positive 11. So 11 times negative 11 gives me negative 121. 11 times negative 4x is negative 44x. What do I do now? I change the signs and I get a remainder of 0. So I just figured out that the denominator factors into these two factors. So I have the limit as x approaches negative 11/4, which I didn't tell you the first step. First step is direct substitution and you get 0 over 0. Sorry. All right, so I have negative 4x minus 11 over, this turns into these two factors. So negative 4x minus 11 times x plus 11. So my negative 4x minus 11s cancel out. And that leaves me with 1 over x plus 11. So I'm going to sub in a negative 11/4 into there. So I have 1 over negative 11/4 plus 11. And that is going to give me 1 divided by parentheses, negative 11/4 plus 11. And I get this repeating decimal, so change it into a fraction and I get 4/33. Okay. All right, let's try one where we have to rationalize or get a common denominator. We have the limit as x goes to 47/4 of 1 over x minus 12 plus 4. That looks like a plus sign instead of subtraction. There. Plus 4 over x minus 47/4. All right, if I sub in 47/4 into my denominator, 47/4 minus 47/4 is 0. And if I sub in 47/4 into my numerator, I get 1 divided by 47/4 minus 12. And then I'm going to subtract 4. I'm going to add 4 to that. And I get 0. So I have 0 over 0 again. So we're going to try to get common denominators. So this is not factorable. I don't see any square roots to rationalize. So I'm going to go ahead and use common denominators. So there's fractions all over the place. If I look at this and just look at the numerator, what would my common denominator be? So think about it this way. New problem. If I have 1/3 plus 1/7, what would my common denominator be? It would be 21. Where did you get the 21 from? Because I multiplied the 3 and the 7 together. So let's go back to our problem. If one denominator is x minus 12 and the other denominator is 1, then the common denominator is x minus 12. So I've got the limit as x goes to 47/4 of 1 over x minus 12 plus 4 times x minus 12 over x minus 12. So in order to get an x minus 12 here, I multiply the top and the bottom by x minus 12. Okay, so what would my common denominator be on the bottom? On the bottom, my common denominator would be 4. So I'm going to multiply a 4 on top and bottom here. So that gives me a 4x over 4 minus 47/4. Okay, so now I'm going to put this top part together over a common denominator. Okay, so this is a 1 plus 4x minus 48. 4x minus 48. This becomes 4x minus 47 over a common denominator of 4. So I can do one more thing before I start wondering where I need to go from here. I can put together the terms in my numerator. So I get 1 plus 4x minus 48 becomes 4x minus 47 over x minus 12 over 4x minus 47 over 4. Okay, so what do I do now? I see that the 4x minus 47s match. So what I actually have, if you look at the big picture, is I have a fraction divided by a fraction. So what do I do with a fraction divided by a fraction? I flip and multiply. So that becomes 4x minus 47 over x minus 12 times, and then I flip this. So I get 4 over 4x minus 47. So now my 4x minus 47s match, and any number divided by itself is 1. So I'm left with 4 over x minus 12. So now I can use direct substitution again. So I have 4 divided by 47/4 minus 12. And I get negative 16. Okay, let's try a couple more, and then you will be done learning. So I have the limit as x goes to 12 from the left of negative 2 over x minus 12. So direct substitution, remember I can just shove in a 12. So that's going to give me a negative 2 over 0. So what are my two possible answers immediately? Either positive infinity or negative infinity. I got to figure out which one. So I need a number that's a little bit to the left of 12. So I'm going to use 11.9. Okay? So I'm going to sub in 11.9 here. Whatever sign I get determines which infinity I use. So I have negative 2 divided by 11.9 minus 12. And I get 20, which is positive. So I have a positive infinity. What about the limit as x goes to 12 from the right of negative 2 over x minus 12? So we already know it's negative 2 over 0. So we already know our answer is either positive infinity or negative infinity. I just got to figure out which one. So I'm going to get a number that's just to the right of 12. So let's use 12.01. You could use 12.1. You could use 12.001. You just want it to be really, really close to 12 from the right. So again, all we're looking is for the sign. So if I plug in a 12.01, I have negative 2 divided by 12.01 minus 12. And that gives me negative 200. So if I got a negative, that means I have negative infinity for an answer. So my left-sided limit gave me positive infinity. My right-sided limit gave me negative infinity. So what is the limit of my function as x just goes to 12? Does positive infinity equal negative infinity? No, it does not. So I have does not exist. Okay? So that is it for the algebraic portion of Module 2. And I'll see you later.